Imagine walking through the center of a massive, bustling city. There are millions of people around you, towering apartment buildings packed with families, cafes overflowing with conversations, and a constant stream of digital notifications buzzing in your pocket. You are surrounded by humanity, and yet you feel entirely, profoundly alone. It is a paradox of modern life, and it is something millions of people are experiencing in total silence right now. But what if I told you that this feeling of isolation isn't just a fleeting emotion or a psychological shadow? What if it is actively rewriting your biology? Welcome to today's deep dive, where we are going to explore the hidden architecture of human connection. We are looking at the lonely brain, and specifically what prolonged isolation actually does to our hormones, our sleep, our immune system, and even the rate at which we age.
It really is one of the most misunderstood and underestimated health crises of our time. We have been conditioned to think of loneliness as a personal failure or just a temporary state of sadness. But the reality is that loneliness is not just a feeling, it is a deeply rooted biological state. If we want to understand what is happening inside the bodies of people who feel chronically isolated, we have to look back thousands of years. Humans did not evolve with sharp claws, thick armor, or incredible speed. Our primary survival mechanism was each other. We survived because we formed tribes, shared resources, and protected one another. Connection was quite literally the difference between life and death.
So when we feel lonely today, our brain isn't just thinking, I wish I had plans this weekend. It is actually interpreting that lack of connection as a literal threat to our physical survival.
Exactly. When you are isolated, your brain registers a survival threat. It assumes that because you are separated from the safety of the group, you are vulnerable to predators or starvation. Consequently, it flips a biological switch. The nervous system shifts away from a state of rest and digest and moves directly into a defensive, hypervigilant state. It is a fascinating, albeit destructive, evolutionary hangover. The brain does not know the difference between being stranded alone on a prehistoric savanna and sitting alone in a modern high-rise apartment. The physiological reaction is identical.
That is a staggering way to look at it. If the brain is constantly in this defensive posture, what is happening chemically? I have to imagine the stress hormones are just running rampant.
You hit the nail on the head. The moment the brain registers this social isolation as a threat, it activates the body's stress response systems. Cortisol, which is our primary stress hormone, begins to rise and stays elevated. Now, cortisol is incredibly useful if you need to run away from a physical danger for 10 minutes. But it is highly toxic when it is dripping into your bloodstream continuously for months or years. This chronic elevation of cortisol disrupts almost every major system in the body. It impairs your metabolism, it drains your energy production, and most insidiously, it triggers systemic inflammation.
I want to pause on that word, inflammation. We hear about it all the time in the context of diet or recovering from an injury. But you are saying that an emotional state, the feeling of being lonely, can actually cause physical inflammation in the body. Is it almost like the body is having an allergic reaction to isolation?
That is a brilliant metaphor. Yes, it is very much like an allergic reaction. When you are in a chronic state of stress due to loneliness, the immune system prepares for physical wounding. Evolutionarily, if you were alone, you were more likely to be attacked, so your immune system ramps up inflammatory signaling to prepare for potential injuries. But because there is no actual physical wound to heal, this low-grade inflammation just circulates throughout the body. And as we know from modern medicine, chronic inflammation is the bedrock of almost every major disease we face today: cardiovascular disease, metabolic dysfunction, diabetes, and even severe cognitive decline. Emotional isolation eventually crystallizes into physical pathology.
It makes you rethink the entire concept of mind-body separation. They aren't just connected. They are the exact same system. If someone is carrying this heavy biological burden of stress and inflammation every single day, it makes complete sense why lonely individuals often report feeling physically exhausted, even if they haven't done anything physically demanding.
Precisely. They are exhausted because their nervous system is running a marathon in the background 24/7. The body is expending a massive amount of metabolic energy just trying to maintain this state of high alert. The nervous system is desperately scanning the environment for threats because there is no tribe to help share the cognitive load. This is why people experiencing chronic loneliness often feel mentally overwhelmed and completely drained. The biological engine is constantly redlining.
Which brings us to the ultimate reset button for that engine: sleep. We talk so much about sleep optimization, from room temperature to blue light blockers. But if your brain thinks you are in mortal danger because you are isolated, I imagine it's not going to let you fall into a deep, restorative sleep.
You cannot biohack your way out of a nervous system that feels profoundly unsafe. Sleep is the ultimate act of biological vulnerability. You are unconscious and defenseless. Humans sleep best and achieve the deepest stages of restorative sleep when the nervous system registers safety. When chronic isolation increases that baseline vigilance we talked about, the brain essentially keeps one eye open. This manifests as fragmented sleep, difficulty falling asleep, and a severe reduction in deep, slow-wave sleep.
So even if someone is in bed for 8 hours, if they are deeply lonely, their brain isn't actually resting. They are getting junk sleep.
Exactly. And once sleep architecture deteriorates, you enter a vicious, accelerating cycle. Poor sleep further elevates cortisol the next day. It degrades your emotional regulation, making you more irritable and less likely to seek out the social connections you desperately need. It weakens immune resilience. The loneliness ruins the sleep, and the ruined sleep makes the loneliness harder to escape.
That is a terrifying loop. And it leads me to a really strange paradox about the era we live in. We are currently existing in the most digitally connected time in human history. We can instantly video chat with someone across the globe. We have thousands of followers. We are constantly messaging. Yet, all the data suggests that loneliness is skyrocketing. Why is our biology not satisfied by digital connection?
Because digital connection is the equivalent of empty calories for the human nervous system. Think of it like nutritional science. You can eat highly processed junk food that makes you feel full for an hour, but it provides zero actual vitamins or minerals. Your body is still starving at a cellular level. Social media and digital communication provide psychological stimulation, but they do not provide biological regulation.
So we are essentially gorging on social junk food and wondering why our nervous systems are malnourished.
That is exactly it. Human biology evolved around physical presence. We regulate our nervous systems through eye contact, through the subtle tone of a voice in a shared acoustic space, through physical touch, and through shared experiences in real time. When you are physically with someone you trust, your brain releases oxytocin, which actively lowers cortisol and calms the nervous system. A text message or a like on a photo might give you a tiny, fleeting hit of dopamine, but it does not trigger the deep, oxytocin-driven nervous system regulation that physical presence does. In fact, the constant curation and comparison we see online often exacerbates feelings of inadequacy and deepens the sense of isolation.
It is profound to think that you could have 1 million followers online and still be biologically starving for connection. It really shifts the perspective from "I need more friends" to "I need more genuine, nervous system regulating interactions." And if we don't get those interactions, what happens long term? We touched on inflammation, but I want to talk about aging. Can loneliness actually accelerate the rate at which our bodies age?
The research on this is incredibly sobering, and the short answer is yes. Because chronic loneliness drives up inflammation, degrades sleep, and keeps stress hormones elevated, it accelerates biological aging at a cellular level. We are talking about the shortening of telomeres, which are the protective caps on the ends of our DNA. When those shorten faster, our cells age faster. Some prominent researchers and public health officials have even equated the long-term health risks of chronic loneliness to smoking 15 cigarettes a day. It is that severe. Humans age gracefully and maintain biological resilience when they have community, a sense of shared purpose, and emotional support. Without it, the biological machinery simply wears out much faster.
Comparing it to smoking 15 cigarettes a day really puts the sheer physical weight of this into perspective. We have public health campaigns about smoking, about seatbelts, about sugar, but there is a massive stigma around loneliness. People feel deeply ashamed to admit it. They view it as a character flaw, like they are somehow unlovable or socially inept.
and that stigma is one of the biggest barriers to healing. We need a fundamental paradigm shift in how society views loneliness. We need to stop viewing it as a psychological weakness and start recognizing it for what it is, a biological signal. If you feel physically thirsty, you don't feel ashamed. You recognize that your body is signaling a need for water. Loneliness is exactly the same mechanism. It is your nervous system signaling a critical need for connection. It is not a flaw. It is your biology working exactly as it was designed to, trying to keep you alive.
Reframing loneliness as biological thirst is incredibly empowering. It takes the shame out of the equation. So, if someone listening right now is recognizing this in themselves, they feel that chronic exhaustion, that fragmented sleep, that underlying hum of anxiety, what is the antidote? How do we quench that biological thirst in a modern world that is increasingly designed to keep us apart?
The solutions are fundamentally simple, but they require intentional effort in our modern environment. The nervous system heals through cues of safety, and safety comes from authentic connection. It means prioritizing real, unfiltered conversations over text messages. It means finding community, even in small doses. Shared movement, like exercising with a group or going for a walk with a friend, is incredibly powerful because it combines physical activity with social bonding. Sunlight, physical touch, shared meals, these are ancient biological anchors. We also have to recognize that building these connections takes time. It is about slowly retraining the nervous system to realize that it is safe to let its guard down.
It feels like we are reaching a point where physical health and emotional health can no longer be treated in separate silos. You cannot out-diet or out-exercise a lonely nervous system.
I completely agree. The future of human wellness has to be fully integrated. We are already seeing this shift with wearable technology. People are tracking their heart rate variability, their sleep stages, and their physiological strain. What is fascinating is that these devices often pick up on the biological markers of emotional stress long before the person consciously registers it. A sudden drop in HRV or a disruption in sleep architecture can be the body's way of saying, "I am carrying too much emotional weight alone." The data is finally proving what ancient wisdom has always known. Our physiology is inextricably linked to our social environment.
It is a profound realization. We are ancient biological machines trying to navigate a hyper-modern world, and we are paying the price when we forget our basic design. This conversation has completely changed how I view the concept of community. It is not just a nice societal concept, it is a biological imperative. The idea that our cells are literally listening to our social environment is something that will stay with me for a long time.
It is a powerful lens through which to view our lives. If we understand that our biology requires connection, we can start designing our days, our habits, and our societies to support that, rather than working against it.
Thank you so much for breaking down the science behind this. To everyone listening, we hope this episode offers a new perspective on what it means to be healthy. Loneliness is not a weakness, it's a signal. It is your body asking for the very thing it needs to survive and thrive. As you go about your week, remember that humans were never designed to heal alone. Protect your sleep, protect your recovery, and above all, fiercely protect your connections. We will see you in the next episode as we continue to explore the hidden biology of modern life.